The artificial sky of the Galaxy Council station stretched across the vast chamber, mimicking a perfect blend of multiple alien atmospheres. Commander Alan Wright gazed upward, observing the swirling colors that represented thousands of worlds, all members of this grand alliance. For 75 years, Earth had waited patiently, fulfilling every requirement, exceeding expectations, and yet still, they remained classified as a developing species. In the enormous circular council chamber, representatives from over 300 worlds sat in tiered sections. The more influential species occupied the lower rings, closest to the central speaking platform, where Alan now stood. Translation systems hummed softly around his ears, converting the cacophony of alien languages into comprehensible English. Geo. Distinguished members of the Galaxy Council. Alan began, his voice steady, despite the frustration burning inside him. The United Earth Federation comes before you today, as we have every standard cycle for the past 75 years, to request equal voting rights within this assembly. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Drexian representative, Ambassador Thal, leaned forward, his 4 pairs of eyes narrowing in what Alan had learned was amusement. The Drexians had been among the founding members of the Council, their civilization dating back nearly 30,000 years by Earth standards. Commander Wright. Thal's voice resonated through the translation system. We appreciate Earth's contributions to the Galaxy Council. Your species' enthusiasm is commendable. However, as we've explained in previous sessions, full voting rights are reserved for civilizations that have demonstrated consistent interstellar presence for at least 100 standard cycles. Alan clenched his jaw. With respect, Ambassador, that requirement was not disclosed when Earth joined the Council. In fact, the original agreement stated a probationary period of 50 years. Circumstances change. Commander, interjected Ambassador Vex of the Valyrian Collective, another founding member. Her translucent skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that signaled condescension. The Council must adapt its policies to maintain stability across the galaxy. Surely your young species understands the necessity of patience. Alan fought to maintain his diplomatic composure. Patience, Ambassador Vex, is something humanity has demonstrated in abundance. We have contributed our technology's resources and manpower to Council initiatives. Earth scientists have developed medical procedures now used throughout the galaxy. Our engineers have enhanced your communication systems. Yet we remain without a voice in decisions that affect our people. Ambassador Krax of the Carni Dominion. A militaristic species, known for their aggressive expansion, before joining the Council, made a dismissive gesture with his armored appendage. The humans forget that their technology was built upon foundations provided by senior Council members. Without our guidance, Earth would still be limited to its own solar system. The comment stung, particularly because it contained a grain of truth. Earth had indeed benefited from alien technologies, but had also contributed significant innovations of their own. More importantly, the Council had benefited enormously from these exchanges, though they rarely acknowledged it. Perhaps, Alan suggested, maintaining an even tone, the Council could consider a graduated voting system, one that would allow Earth partial representation, while we continue to work toward full membership. Ambassador Thal exchanged glances with the other senior representatives. We understand your eagerness, Commander Wright. The Council will take your proposal under advisement. Perhaps in a few more years, when Earth has further demonstrated its commitment to galactic harmony. It was the same answer, always the same. A few more years. Just a little longer. Be patient. Alan felt a presence beside him. Samantha Clark, his communications officer, subtly pressed a datapad into his hand. On it was a single message. They're stalling again. Protocol Exodus. Protocol Exodus. The contingency plan developed over the past decade, approved by Earth's leadership, but never revealed to the Council. A plan born from years of frustration and careful preparation. Alan looked up at the assembled representatives. The senior species, Drexians, Valerians carni, and a dozen others watched him with the condescending patience one might show a child. In the upper tiers sat representatives of newer member worlds, many of whom had joined after Earth, but had already been granted voting rights due to their alliances with senior members. His gaze shifted to the handful of species who had shown Earth genuine respect, the philosophical Nelvi, with their crystalline bodies, the pragmatic Cantharans, with their hive-mind ambassadors. They would understand what was about to happen. Alan straightened his shoulders and spoke, no longer requesting but declaring. Distinguished members of the Galaxy Council for 75 years Earth has been a loyal, contributing member of this assembly. We have shared our knowledge, defended Council interests, and abided by Council regulations. We have done everything asked of us, and more. He paused, feeling the weight of his next words. Yet our patience has limits. The chamber grew still, as the translation systems conveyed his tone as much as his words. Therefore, by the authority vested in me by the United Earth Federation, I hereby activate Protocol Exodus. As of this moment, Earth officially withdraws from the Galaxy Council and all associated treaties. Uproar erupted throughout the chamber. Ambassador Thal rose to his full height, towering over the central platform. This is preposterous. You cannot simply withdraw. There are procedures, obligations, all of which are outlined in the original membership agreement. Alan interrupted, which states clearly that any member world may withdraw with immediate effect if they believe the Council no longer represents their interests. Section 47, Paragraph 12. Commander Wright. Ambassador Vex's voice cut through the chaos, her bioluminescence now pulsing with alarm patterns. This is an emotional reaction that will damage Earth's standing in the galactic community. Reconsider this rash decision. The decision is not rash, Ambassador. It is the culmination of decades of systematic discrimination. Earth has prepared for this moment. Alan turned to address the entire assembly. The United Earth Federation will be initiating immediate recall of all Earth Technologies personnel and resources currently deployed throughout Council territories and installations. Ambassador Krax barked a harsh laugh that the translation system struggled to interpret correctly. Empty threats, human. Your technologies are integrated into Council systems. You cannot simply remove them without causing damage to your own interests. Alan smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. We have planned for this eventuality, Ambassador. In fact, the process has already begun. As if on cue, the artificial sky above flickered momentarily. So brief was the interruption that many representatives didn't notice, but those who did exchanged worried glances. This meeting is adjourned, Alan concluded, turning to leave. Earth's representatives will be departing all Council facilities within 24 standard hours. We suggest you prepare your systems for the transition. As Alan and Samantha walked from the chamber, the sounds of confusion and protest filled the air behind them. Samantha kept her voice low, though they were already using encrypted communication channels. Signal sent to all Earth stations. Protocol Exodus is now active across all sectors. Alan nodded grimly. And so it begins. In the primary control center of Centauri Station, one of the Galaxy Council's major hubs for medical research, Chief Engineer Gregory Peterson received the encrypted Exodus alert on his private channel. He exchanged a knowing glance with his deputy Olivia Martinez before executing the carefully rehearsed procedures they had practiced in secret for years. Initiating system separation, Gregory murmured, his fingers flying across holographic interfaces. Phase 1 complete in 3 minutes. Throughout the massive station, Earth personnel moved with practiced efficiency, securing essential data, activating dormant secondary systems, and preparing for departure. The non-human staff watched in confusion as their human colleagues suddenly abandoned ongoing projects and conversations. Dr. Sarah Williams, head of the Xenobiology Department, approached the station's Drexian administrator. I regret to inform you that I and my team will be departing immediately. As per Protocol Exodus, All Earth-developed medical technologies will be deactivated within the hour. The administrator's multiple eyes widened in alarm. Deactivated. That's nearly 60% of our critical systems. You can't possibly. The transition protocols have been uploaded to your emergency systems, Sarah interrupted calmly. They will maintain basic functionality for approximately 72 hours, sufficient time for council technicians to implement alternative solutions. What alternative solutions? The administrator demanded. Your species integrated your technologies with ours. They cannot simply be replaced. Sarah's expression remained professional, but there was a hint of satisfaction in her voice. That is no longer Earth's concern. Similar scenes played out across countless council facilities throughout the galaxy. At Vega, Prime Communications Hub, Earth technicians disconnected the quantum entanglement arrays. They had developed technology that had revolutionized instantaneous communication across vast distances. On Proxima Centauri, Earth engineers shut down the antimatter production facilities that powered much of the Council's transportation infrastructure. Within hours, the impact was being felt across thousands of worlds. In her office aboard the Galaxy Council's administrative headquarters, Ambassador Vex received increasingly alarming reports from throughout Council space. The Valyrian diplomat's skin had taken on a pale, sickly hue as the implications became clear. How is this possible? She demanded of her advisors. How could they have integrated fail-safes into so many critical systems without our knowledge? Her chief technology advisor, trembling slightly, explained, "The humans were extraordinarily thorough, Ambassador. For decades, they've been installing redundant systems, creating backdoors, and implementing protocols that allowed for clean separation of their technologies from ours. We never detected these measures because they were hidden within legitimate upgrades and maintenance routines." "And why?" Vex asked, her voice dangerously soft. "Did we allow them such access in the first place?" "Because," admitted another advisor, "we underestimated them. We saw their eagerness to contribute as naivety, not strategy. And they were simply better at certain technological innovations than our specialists." Ambassador Vex stared out at the artificial sky, which now flickered periodically, as Earth technicians withdrew from the power management systems they had designed. "Summon an emergency council session. We must contain this situation before it spreads further." On Earth, in the underground command center beneath New Geneva, President Heather Adams received real-time updates from across the galaxy. Around her stood the architects of Protocol Exodus, Admiral Carol Rivera, Minister of Galactic Affairs, Frank Taylor, and via holographic projection Commander Alan Wright, still en route from the Council Station. "Phase 1, proceeding as planned." "Madam President," Admiral Rivera reported, 87% of our personnel have initiated withdrawal protocols. Essential technologies are being deactivated systematically. Minimal resistance encountered thus far." "And the Council's response?" President Adams asked. Minister Taylor consulted his data feed. "Primarily confusion, followed by increasing alarm. They've called an emergency session, but with the communication disruptions caused by our withdrawal from their networks, many representatives are struggling to attend remotely." Commander Wright's hologram nodded with grim satisfaction. "They never thought we would actually do it. For all their supposed wisdom, they failed to recognize that 75 years of patronizing treatment would eventually reach a breaking point." President Adams studied the strategic display, showing thousands of indicator lights representing Earth assets throughout Council space. Already, many were changing from green to blue, signifying successful disengagement. "What about our allies, the non-Council species who have traded with us directly?" "Ambassador Richard Brown is handling those communications," Minister Taylor replied. "The Nelvi have already expressed understanding of our position and have proposed maintaining bilateral relations outside Council frameworks. The Cantharans are cautiously supportive. Several other mid-tier species have requested immediate discussions." "And our vulnerabilities," President Adams pressed. "The Carni were making veiled threats even before we activated Exodus." Admiral Rivera's expression hardened. "We're prepared, Madam President. Defense systems are at maximum readiness. If any Council species attempts military action, they'll discover we've been holding back more than just medical and communication technologies. President Adams nodded slowly, the weight of their gamble evident in her expression. 75 years of preparation has led to this moment. Let's hope it brings the recognition we deserve, rather than the isolation they expect. The Emergency Council session devolved into chaos almost immediately. With many representatives unable to attend in person due to travel and communication disruptions, the central chamber held less than half its usual occupants. Those present shouted over one another as the translation systems struggled to keep pace. Ambassador Thal attempted to restore order. Distinguished representatives, we must approach this crisis methodically. The humans have initiated a coordinated withdrawal of their technologies and personnel, which you dismissed as impossible just hours ago, interrupted the Zeltaran ambassador, his exoskeleton clicking in agitation. Our medical facilities are already operating at reduced capacity. 3 emergency procedures had to be abandoned mid-operation. Ambassador Crack slammed his armored appendage against the speaking platform. This is not merely withdrawal, it is sabotage. The humans have deliberately crippled Council infrastructure. We should respond with immediate military action. A ripple of alarm spread through the chamber at this suggestion. The Nelvi representative rose, her crystalline form catching the light. The humans have removed their own technologies they freely shared, but for which they received inadequate recognition. They have followed Council procedures for withdrawal. There are no grounds for military response. The Cantheran representatives, 3 identical humanoids who functioned as a connected consciousness, spoke in perfect unison. The Cantheran collective foresaw this possibility. We have maintained independent technological development, rather than becoming dependent on Council integration. Other species would have been wise to do the same. Ambassador Vex, who had been conferring with her advisors, finally addressed the assembly. The scale of disruption is larger than initially assessed. Medical services, communications, power generation, transportation networks all are experiencing significant degradation. The humans integrated their technologies so thoroughly that extraction is causing system-wide instabilities. Then we must compel them to restore these systems, Ambassador Crax insisted. The Carney Dominion stands ready to demonstrate the consequences of such betrayal. The Nelvi representative's crystalline form pulsed with light patterns, indicating disapproval. Such action would violate multiple Council laws and would likely trigger defensive measures from Earth. Based on their methodical withdrawal, it would be illogical to assume they have not prepared defensive contingencies as well. Ambassador Thal raised all 4 of his arms, demanding attention. Before we consider drastic measures, we should attempt diplomatic resolution. Perhaps if we offer the humans the voting rights they sought. Too late for that, remarked the Cantheran trio. Analysis indicates the humans planned this withdrawal for decades. They will not be satisfied with concessions that should have been granted years ago. As the debate continued without resolution, the artificial sky above flickered more frequently, a visible reminder of their growing predicament. 1 week after Protocol Exodus began, the impact across Council space had exceeded even Earth's predictions. The carefully orchestrated withdrawal of Earth technologies had revealed just how dependent the Galaxy Council had become on human innovation. On the colony world of Alaran, a joint human-Cantheran settlement in what had been considered neutral space, tensions reached a breaking point. A battle group of Carney warships entered orbit ostensibly to protect Cantheran interests, but clearly intended to intimidate the human population. Admiral Carol Rivera, commanding Earth's Second Fleet from the flagship UES Indomitable, monitored the situation with growing concern. Carney Battle Group maintaining high orbit over Ilaran. 17 vessels, including 3 Dreadnought-class ships. They've ignored our warnings to withdraw. In the secure communications room, she addressed the holographic projections of President Adams and her Security Council. Madam President, the Carney are positioning for a show of force. Their commander has issued an ultimatum demanding that we restore all technologies provided to Carney worlds and facilities. President Adams' expression remained resolute. Have all Earth citizens been evacuated from vulnerable areas? Yes, Madam President. Our people on Illyrin have been consolidated in the central settlement, protected by our defensive shield. The Cantharans have publicly declared neutrality, but privately assured us they won't interfere with our defensive measures. Minister Taylor looked concerned. The Carney are notorious for their aggression. If they attack an Earth settlement, other Council species might view it as justification for similar actions against our interests elsewhere. President Adams considered this for a moment before turning to Admiral Rivera. Carol, is the Artemis system fully operational? A tense silence fell over the conference. The Artemis system, Earth's most closely guarded technological development, had never been deployed in an actual conflict scenario. Yes, Madam President. All components are in place. However, using it would reveal capabilities we've kept secret for decades. Better to reveal them than lose our people, President Adams decided. You are authorized to activate Artemis if the Carney initiate hostile action, not before. Admiral Rivera nodded grimly. Understood, Madam President. The confrontation culminated more quickly than anyone anticipated. The Carney commander, perhaps believing the humans would retreat rather than risk open conflict, launched a barrage of energy weapons at the settlement's protective shield, a clear act of aggression. Admiral Rivera's response was immediate. Artemis protocols activated, targeting Carney command systems. Throughout the fleet, specialized operators engaged a system that had been developed in absolute secrecy, a technology that could interface with and override the quantum computing cores used in most advanced Council vessels. On the Carney ships, confusion turned to panic as control systems suddenly failed. Weapons powered down, engines stalled, and life support systems switched to emergency backup. Within minutes, the entire battle group hung powerless in orbit, completely neutralized without a single destructive shot fired. Admiral Rivera opened a communication channel to the lead Carney vessel. This is Admiral Carol Rivera of the United Earth Federation. Your vessels have been temporarily disabled. No permanent damage has been inflicted, and life support will continue functioning. However, your offensive capabilities have been neutralized. You have 1 hour to agree to peaceful withdrawal from this system, or we will be forced to take more permanent measures. The response was delayed, but inevitable. Without options, the Carney commander agreed to withdraw once their systems were restored. News of the encounter spread rapidly throughout the galaxy, despite the communication difficulties. The Carney, one of the Council's premier military powers, had been rendered helpless by Earth technology that no one had known existed. The balance of power had shifted dramatically in a single engagement. In the aftermath of the Illyrin incident, the Galaxy Council fractured along lines that had been invisible for centuries. The senior species, those who had benefited most from the established power structure, demanded unified action against what they termed Earth's technological terrorism. However, many younger Council members saw opportunity in the changing dynamic. In a private chamber adjacent to the main Council hall, Ambassador Richard Brown met with representatives from 27 species, none of whom held significant power within the Council structure. The United Earth Federation appreciates your willingness to engage in direct dialogue, Richard began. For too long, the Council has been dominated by a small group of species who manipulate the rules to maintain their advantages. The Nelvi representative's crystalline form shimmered as she spoke. The Illyrin incident demonstrated that the established power structure is no longer sustainable. The Carney believed their military supremacy was absolute, a belief the senior Council members cultivated to maintain control. Many of us joined the Council seeking protection and advancement, added a reptilian Ceridian diplomat. Instead, we found ourselves trapped in a hierarchy that prevented true progress. Earth proposes an alternative, Richard continued. A new alliance based on genuine equality and mutual respect. Each member world would retain technological sovereignty while participating in collaborative development. No artificial waiting periods, no tiered voting rights, true partnership. The representatives exchanged glances, some skeptical, others hopeful. "You speak of ideals," the Cantheran trio observed, "but practical matters must be addressed. The Council infrastructure spans the galaxy. How would a new alliance establish itself without similar resources?" Richard smiled. "Earth has not been idle during our 75 years of Council membership. We've developed independent infrastructure, established secure communication channels, and created technological foundations that don't rely on Council systems. With your participation, these networks could rapidly expand." "And military protection?" asked the Ceridian. "Many smaller worlds depend on Council defense agreements. The technology demonstrated at Illyrin is just one aspect of Earth's defensive capabilities," Richard replied carefully. "We are prepared to extend protective arrangements to Alliance members with mutual defense protocols that benefit all, rather than serving the interests of a few dominant species." As the discussions continued, it became clear that Earth's proposition resonated with many of the assembled representatives. By the session's end, 17 species had tentatively agreed to join what would become known as the Terran Alliance, with 10 more requesting additional information before committing. The Galaxy Council's disintegration accelerated in the following months. As Earth's withdrawal destabilized the technological infrastructure that had bound thousands of worlds together, individual species began making their own arrangements. Some sought bilateral agreements with Earth, others formed regional coalitions, and many simply retreated to focus on their own territories. The Drexians, Valyrians, and their closest allies attempted to maintain Council authority through a combination of threats and incentives, but their influence diminished daily. Without the integrative technologies that Earth had provided, maintaining galaxy-wide cohesion became increasingly difficult. On Vega Prime, where the Council's primary communications hub had once facilitated instantaneous contact across the galaxy, Ambassador Vex stared at the darkened control panels, symbolic of the Council's fading power. "We should have granted them voting rights," she murmured to Ambassador Thal, who had joined her to assess the facility's condition. 75 years of contribution, and we couldn't see past our own prejudices." Thal's multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep contemplation. "We believed time was on our side. The arrogance of ancient species. We measure patience in centuries, and expected others to do the same. They were planning this from the beginning," Vex realized. "Every technology they shared, every system they improved, all designed for eventual extraction if necessary." "Not from the beginning," Thal corrected. "Initially they were genuine in their desire for integration. It was our repeated rejection that forced their contingency planning." He gestured at the silent communication arrays. "And now the Council dies not with conflict, but with whispers fading into silence." 3 months after Protocol Exodus began, representatives from 42 former Council species gathered on Earth's moon for the formal establishment of the Terran Alliance. The location was symbolic, a celestial body that had once represented humanity's first steps beyond their homeworld, now served as the foundation for a new galactic order. In the lunar facility known as Armstrong Base, Commander Alan Wright, now appointed Director of Alliance Affairs, prepared to address the inaugural assembly. The chamber was smaller than the Council's Grand Hall, but designed with careful attention to the diverse needs of all member species. Unlike the hierarchical arrangement of the Council, representatives sat in a circular pattern, with no position indicating greater status than another. As Alan took his place at the speaking platform, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as frustration had transformed into resolve, then strategy, and finally revolution, not through violence but through careful preparation and the courage to act when the moment arrived. Distinguished representatives of the Terran Alliance. He began his voice, carrying clearly through the advanced acoustic design of the chamber. Today marks not just the formation of a new galactic partnership, but the recognition of a fundamental principle that all sentient species, regardless of their technological history or the age of their civilizations, deserve equal voice in matters that affect our shared future. Around the chamber, translation systems, refined versions of those used by the Council, conveyed his words in perfect fidelity to each species' native language. Earth withdrew from the Galaxy Council not to isolate ourselves, but to create something better. The alliance we establish today is founded on mutual respect, technological sovereignty, and genuine collaboration. No member will be relegated to second-class status based on arbitrary criteria. No species will be asked to wait a few more years for the rights they deserve. The Nelvi representative's crystalline form pulsed with approval, sending rainbows of light across the chamber. The Cantheran trio nodded in perfect synchronization. Representatives from dozens of worlds, some who had never before been granted direct voice in galactic affairs, listened with hopeful attention. The transition has not been without challenges, Alan acknowledged. The technological separation from Council systems has created difficulties for many worlds. But it has also revealed the artificial dependencies that were used to maintain an outdated power structure. Together, we have the opportunity to build new networks, new systems that serve all members equally. He gestured to the large viewing window that dominated one wall of the chamber, offering a spectacular view of Earth, rising over the lunar horizon. From this vantage point, my homeworld appears small, a tiny blue marble in the vastness of space. It reminds us that all our worlds, even those with the most ancient civilizations, are simply small points of light in an enormous galaxy. Our differences in development, in history, in biological evolution, these pale in comparison to what we share: curiosity, the desire for security and prosperity, and the capacity for growth. Alan paused, allowing his words to resonate through the translation systems. The Terran Alliance does not seek to replace one form of dominance with another. Earth extends our hand in partnership, not authority. The technology we develop together will be owned collectively, with no hidden mechanisms for control. The defense we provide one another will protect all, not privilege a few. The future we create will be truly shared. As Alan concluded his address, representatives rose in a gesture of approval that transcended their diverse biological forms. The Nelvi crystalline structures chimed melodiously, the Cantheran trio emitted synchronized light patterns, and dozens of other species demonstrated their support through their own cultural expressions. President Heather Adams, who had traveled from Earth for this historic occasion, stepped forward to formalize the Alliance Charter. Let the record show that on this day, the Terran Alliance is officially established, a covenant of equals, dedicated to mutual advancement, defense, and exploration of our shared galaxy. One by one, representatives approached to add their species' authentication to the Charter, some using electronic signatures, others biological markers, still others ceremonial symbols. With each addition, the new alliance grew stronger, a counterpoint to the fading influence of the Galaxy Council. 6 months after Protocol Exodus began, Commander Alan Wright returned to the Galaxy Council station for the first time since his dramatic departure. The once bustling facility now operated at reduced capacity, with darkened corridors and malfunctioning systems, evidence of Earth's technological withdrawal. The council chamber itself was sparsely populated. Less than 1/3 of the representatives remained clustered in the lower tiers, where the founding species had once held court. The artificial sky above flickered continuously, casting unstable light across the assembly. Alan stepped onto the central platform, accompanied by Samantha Clark and a small delegation from the Terran Alliance. His formal uniform now bore the insignia of the Alliance, rather than the Earth Federation, symbolizing his broader responsibilities. Ambassador Thal, who had assumed leadership of the diminished council, greeted him with a mixture of resignation and respect. Director Wright, the council recognizes the representative of the Terran Alliance. Thank you, Ambassador, Alan replied. I come before you today not to reopen old wounds, but to formalize the changing reality of our galaxy. The Terran Alliance now includes 67 former Council worlds, with 15 more in advanced negotiation stages. Murmurs spread through the chamber as the translation systems conveyed this information. even the senior council members had not realized the extent of the alliance's growth. The council structure as established millennia ago no longer reflects the needs or desires of many species, Allen continued. Rather than prolonging an inevitable transition, we propose a formal dissolution protocol that would allow remaining council worlds to join the alliance, form their own coalitions, or maintain independence according to their preference. Ambassador Vex's bioluminescence flashed with indignation. You presume to dictate the fate of an institution that has maintained galactic stability for thousands of years. I presume nothing, Ambassador, Allen replied calmly. I merely acknowledge what is already happening. The Council's authority diminishes daily as more worlds choose alternative arrangements. A structured transition would benefit all species, preventing the chaos of sudden collapse. Ambassador Krax, whose influence had waned significantly since the Illyrin incident, growled through the translation system. The humans engineered this situation. They integrated their technologies, made us dependent, then withdrew to watch us fall. Allen met the Carney's accusatory gaze steadily. The technologies we shared were offered in good faith. Had Earth been granted the equal status we repeatedly requested, Protocol Exodus would never have been necessary. He turned to address the entire chamber. All species deserve self-determination. The Council denied that right to many, including Earth. The Alliance recognizes it as fundamental. After hours of contentious debate, a vote was finally called, ironically, the first Council vote in which Earth effectively participated, albeit through the leverage of the Alliance. With many former Council worlds either absent or now aligned with Earth, the outcome was inevitable. By a margin of 3 votes, the Galaxy Council formally voted to dissolve its structure and transfer remaining collective assets to transitional authorities. Some veteran members abstained in protest, while others, recognizing the changing reality, supported the resolution in hopes of securing favorable terms for the transition. As the session concluded, Ambassador Thal approached Allen privately. You have accomplished in 6 months what rebellions could not achieve in millennia, the Drexian observed. I cannot decide whether to admire your species' ingenuity or fear it. Neither response is necessary, Allen replied. We sought only the equality we deserved. The Council's collapse was not our objective, merely a consequence of a system that refused to evolve. Thal's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. And will the Terran Alliance avoid the same mistakes? Power has a way of corrupting even the most idealistic foundations. The Alliance structure contains safeguards against centralized control, Allen assured him. No species, including Earth, can dominate decision-making. We learned from the Council's failures. Time will tell, Thal said thoughtfully. Your species measures history in decades and centuries. Mine thinks in millennia. Perhaps both perspectives have value. The Alliance would welcome Drexian participation, Allen offered. Your experience combined with new approaches could create something greater than either tradition alone. Thal made a gesture that the translation system interpreted as tentative interest. I will consult with my government. The galaxy enters a new era, and adaptation may serve us better than pride. As Allen departed the Council station for the final time, he gazed up at the flickering artificial sky, once a symbol of the Council's grandeur, now emblematic of its decline. Earth had embarked on a risky gambit and emerged not just with independence, but as the architect of a new galactic order. 1 year after Protocol Exodus began, the Terran Alliance headquarters on Earth's moon hosted representatives from over 100 worlds. The Armstrong Base facility had expanded significantly with new chambers and technologies designed to accommodate the diverse needs of Alliance members. President Heather Adams presided over the anniversary session, flanked by Alliance directors, including Allen Wright, who now coordinated diplomatic relations between member worlds. The circular chamber hummed with activity as representatives prepared for the day's agenda. Distinguished members of the Terran Alliance. President Adams began, 1 year ago today, Earth took a step that many considered reckless withdrawing from the Galaxy Council and removing the technologies we had shared throughout Council space. Today, we reflect on the consequences of that decision and chart our course forward. She gestured to the holographic display dominating the center of the chamber, which showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with Alliance territories highlighted. The dissolution of the Council created initial instability, but the transition has progressed more smoothly than many predicted. 82% of former Council worlds have either joined the Alliance or established bilateral agreements with us. The regional coalitions that formed in Sectors 7 and 12 have proven compatible with Alliance principles and may soon integrate into our broader framework. Alan stepped forward to provide his report. The diplomatic situation continues to evolve favorably. Former Council senior species, including the Drexians and Valyrians, have moved from hostility to cautious engagement. The Carni Dominion remains antagonistic, but has respected the boundaries established after the Illyrin incident. Admiral Rivera, now head of Alliance Defense, added her assessment. The Artemis system has been enhanced with contributions from Nelvi and Cantheran engineers, creating a more robust defensive network. No significant military challenges have emerged since the establishment of our joint patrol protocols. Minister Taylor reported on technological developments. The collaborative research initiative launched 6 months ago has already yielded impressive results. The integration of Earth quantum computing with Nelvi crystalline storage and Cantheran biomimetic interfaces has created systems superior to anything previously available through Council networks. As the reports continued, it became clear that the Alliance had not only survived, but thrived in the aftermath of the Council's collapse. What had begun as Earth's bid for recognition had transformed the galactic landscape, creating opportunities for dozens of previously marginalized species. After the formal session concluded, Alan found himself on the observation deck overlooking the lunar landscape, joined by Samantha Clark, now serving as liaison to newly admitted Alliance members. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" she asked, gazing at Earth shining in the distance. "When we first activated Protocol Exodus, I thought we might be condemning ourselves to isolation." Alan shook his head. "I believed we would gain independence, but I never anticipated becoming the foundation for a new galactic order. I thought we were simply removing ourselves from an unfair system, not replacing it entirely." "The Council underestimated us at every turn," Samantha observed. "They saw our integration of technologies as naive cooperation rather than strategic positioning. They interpreted our patience as weakness rather than calculation. Even when we withdrew, they expected us to crawl back when we realized our dependence on their networks." "A failure of imagination," Alan agreed. "They couldn't conceive that a young species might have developed beyond their expectations, or that other developing worlds might prefer alliance with Earth over continued Council subordination." They were interrupted by the arrival of a Nelvi representative, her crystalline form glittering in the starlight. "Director Wright, Communications Officer Clark, the Drexian delegation has arrived. Ambassador Thal requests a private conference before tomorrow's session." Alan nodded. "The final founding member considering Alliance membership. I never thought I'd see the day." As they walked back toward the main facility, Alan reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Earth had waited 75 years for recognition that never came, then acted decisively when patience no longer served their interests. In doing so, they had not only secured their own place in the galaxy, but created a more equitable system for dozens of other worlds. The Terran Alliance represented something the Council had failed to achieve, despite millennia of existence: genuine partnership across the diversity of galactic life. It was not perfect, and challenges remained, but the foundation had been laid for a future based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. The artificial sky of the Council chamber had been replaced by the natural vista of stars, visible through the Alliance headquarters' transparent dome, a fitting symbol for the transition from artificial constraints to open possibility. Earth had cut ties with the Galaxy Council and left the universe in panic, only to help create a new cosmos of cooperation from the resulting chaos. As representatives from 100 worlds gathered to continue building this new future, the story of humanity's greatest gamble and its most significant achievement continued to unfold across the stars.